What if I told you that in the 8th century there lived a man who never truly died? A man so powerful that he could tame demons with his bare hands, bend reality to his will, and achieve something that modern science says is impossible. He transcended death itself. His name was Padmasambhava, and the stories of what he accomplished sound like pure fantasy. He allegedly subdued the most terrifying spirits of Tibet, founded the first Buddhist monastery on cursed ground, and when his time came to leave this world, he didn't die. He dissolved his physical body into pure light, achieving what Tibetans call the rainbow body. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing. This isn't just ancient mythology. There are documented cases of this phenomenon happening even in modern times. Monks whose bodies literally vanish at death, leaving behind only hair and nails. Scientists have no explanation for it. And the most shocking part? Padmasambhava left behind a roadmap, hidden teachings that reveal exactly how consciousness can transcend physical death. Techniques so powerful that they've been kept secret for over 1,200 years. Today, you're going to discover the true story of the wizard who conquered death itself. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why his teachings might hold the key to humanity's greatest mystery: what happens when we die. Are you ready to meet the man who proved that death is just an illusion? Before we dive into this extraordinary story, I need you to understand something crucial. What you're about to learn isn't just ancient history. This is about a man who achieved something that challenges everything we think we know about the nature of reality itself. Padmasambhava didn't just live in the 8th century, he transcended it. While most historical figures fade into legend, becoming distant memories, Padmasambhava did something unprecedented. He found a way to remain present, to continue teaching, to guide seekers across centuries through hidden knowledge that's still being discovered today. Think about that for a moment. Over 1,200 years ago, this master was so advanced that he could see into the future. He knew exactly when humanity would be ready for specific teachings, and he hid them accordingly. These aren't just spiritual concepts we're talking about. These are practical techniques for transcending the ultimate limitation, death itself. And here's what makes this even more incredible: the methods he used to achieve this transcendence. The same techniques he used to tame the demons of Tibet and establish Buddhism in the most hostile spiritual environment imaginable are still being practiced today by advanced practitioners who continue to achieve the impossible. But to understand the true magnitude of what Padmasambhava accomplished, we need to start at the beginning. We need to understand who this man really was and why his birth alone was considered a miracle that would change the spiritual destiny of an entire civilization. The story of Padmasambhava begins not with an ordinary birth, but with what can only be described as a supernatural manifestation. According to ancient texts, he wasn't born from a human mother at all. Instead, he appeared as a fully formed 8-year-old child, sitting in the center of a lotus flower on Lake Dhanakosha in the kingdom of Adhyana. But this wasn't just poetic symbolism. The lotus birth represents something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. While ordinary beings are born through the karmic process of conception and birth, carrying the limitations and conditioning of their parents, Padmasambhava manifested directly from the pure potential of enlightened awareness. Think about what this means. From the moment of his appearance, he was free from the karmic debts and psychological conditioning that bind most souls to cycles of suffering and rebirth. He was, quite literally, a being who had already conquered death before he even began his earthly mission. The king of Adhyana, Indrabhuti, discovered this miraculous child and immediately recognized his extraordinary nature. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Even as a child, Padmasambhava displayed abilities that defied natural law. He could read the minds of those around him. He could manifest objects from thin air. He could heal the sick with a touch and calm violent storms with his presence. But perhaps most remarkably, he showed an innate understanding of the deepest spiritual truths without ever having been taught them. This wasn't just a gifted child. This was a consciousness that had already mastered the fundamental forces of reality. And as he grew, these abilities only intensified. By his teenage years, Padmasambhava had mastered what Tibetan Buddhism calls the siddhis, supernatural powers that include telepathy, clairvoyance, the ability to travel instantly across vast distances, and most importantly, complete control over the process of death and rebirth. But here's what's truly extraordinary. He didn't use these powers for personal gain or worldly success. Instead, he recognized that his mission was far greater. He had come to establish a spiritual revolution that would preserve the deepest teachings of consciousness for future generations. And that mission would take him to the most spiritually dangerous place on earth, Tibet. In the 8th century, Tibet was not the peaceful Buddhist kingdom that many people imagine today. It was a land dominated by the Bon religion, a powerful shamanic tradition that worked with fierce local deities and spirits who were absolutely hostile to any foreign spiritual influence. Previous attempts to establish Buddhism in Tibet had failed catastrophically. Monks who tried to build monasteries found their structures mysteriously destroyed overnight. Teachers who attempted to give Buddhist teachings were driven away by supernatural phenomena, violent storms, terrifying visions, and attacks by invisible forces. The Tibetan landscape itself seemed to resist Buddhism. This wasn't just cultural opposition. This was spiritual warfare on a level that most people can't even comprehend. But King Trisong Detsen of Tibet had heard rumors of an extraordinary master in India who possessed powers that surpassed even the most accomplished bone shamans. Desperate to bring Buddhism to his kingdom, he sent messengers to invite Padmasambhava to Tibet. Now, here's where the story becomes absolutely incredible. When Padmasambhava received this invitation, he didn't just accept it. He revealed that he had been preparing for this mission his entire life. He had spent decades mastering not just Buddhist teachings, but also the deepest secrets of Bon shamanism, tantric magic, and the hidden arts of consciousness manipulation. He understood that to succeed in Tibet, he wouldn't be able to simply teach Buddhist philosophy. He would have to engage in direct spiritual combat with forces that had been protecting that land for thousands of years. The journey to Tibet itself was a supernatural odyssey. Ancient texts describe Padmasambhava traveling not just through physical space, but through multiple dimensions of reality. He encountered and subdued powerful spirits along the way, each one becoming a protector of his mission rather than an obstacle. But the real test was waiting for him in Tibet itself, because what he was about to attempt had never been done before in human history: the complete spiritual transformation of an entire civilization through the power of consciousness alone. And the first challenge he would face would determine whether Buddhism would flourish in Tibet or whether Padmasambhava himself would become another casualty of the land's supernatural defenses. When Padmasambhava arrived in Tibet, the spiritual forces of the land immediately recognized him as a threat. But instead of the subtle resistance that previous Buddhist teachers had encountered, they launched an all-out supernatural assault. Picture this. As Padmasambhava approached the site where the first Buddhist monastery was to be built, Samye, the local deities manifested in their most terrifying forms. These weren't just psychological projections or symbolic visions. According to eyewitness accounts, these were tangible manifestations of spiritual power that could affect the physical world. The earth shook. Lightning struck from clear skies. Massive boulders moved by themselves to block the construction. Workers fled in terror as invisible forces destroyed their tools and scattered their materials. But here's where Padmasambhava demonstrated why he was called the second Buddha. Instead of retreating or trying to appease these forces, he did something unprecedented. He entered into direct spiritual combat with each deity, using techniques that combined the deepest levels of Buddhist realization with tantric methods that could manipulate the very fabric of reality. The first major confrontation was with Nyingma, the fierce goddess of Everest. She appeared as a terrifying figure with the power to control weather and natural disasters. But when she attacked Padmasambhava with her full fury, something extraordinary happened. He didn't defend himself. Instead, he absorbed her attack and transformed it into compassionate energy, then reflected it back to her as pure love and wisdom. The goddess, encountering a consciousness more powerful and compassionate than her own, immediately surrendered and became one of his most devoted protectors. This pattern repeated across Tibet. One by one, Padmasambhava encountered the most powerful spirits of the land: mountain gods, lake spirits, sky demons, earth guardians, and through a combination of overwhelming spiritual power and infinite compassion, he transformed them from enemies into allies. But here's what's truly remarkable about this process. Padmasambhava wasn't destroying these deities or banishing them. He was revealing their true nature. He showed them that beneath their fierce, protective masks, they were actually expressions of enlightened wisdom. This is the key to understanding his power over death itself. Padmasambhava had realized that what we call demons, whether external spirits or internal fears, are actually distorted expressions of our own consciousness. By recognizing their true nature and responding with perfect compassion, he could transform any obstacle into a stepping stone toward enlightenment. And this same principle would later become the foundation of his teachings about death. Because death itself, he realized, is just another demon, a terrifying force that seems to threaten our existence, but which can be transformed into the ultimate opportunity for liberation if we approach it with the right understanding. The successful taming of Tibet's spiritual forces proved that Padmasambhava had mastered something far more profound than magical powers. He had achieved complete mastery over the fundamental forces of consciousness itself. With the spiritual forces of Tibet now serving as protectors rather than obstacles, Padmasambhava was ready to establish something that had never existed before, a monastery that would serve as a bridge between the earthly and celestial realms. But Samye wasn't just going to be an ordinary Buddhist temple. Padmasambhava designed it as a three-dimensional mandala, a sacred geometric structure that would literally anchor enlightened consciousness in the physical world. The central temple represented Mount Meru, the cosmic axis around which all existence revolves. Surrounding temples represented the continents and subcontinents of Buddhist cosmology. The entire complex was designed to mirror the structure of the universe itself, creating a space where practitioners could experience the deepest levels of reality. But here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary. As construction began, Padmasambhava didn't just supervise the building process. He infused the very stones and timbers with spiritual energy. Workers reported that materials seemed to move into place by themselves. Complex architectural problems solved themselves overnight. The monastery was being built not just by human hands, but by the combined efforts of humans, spirits, and enlightened beings working together. During this time, Padmasambhava also began training the first generation of Tibetan Buddhist masters. But his teaching methods were unlike anything that had been seen before. Instead of simply explaining Buddhist philosophy, he transmitted understanding directly from mind to mind. Students reported experiencing spontaneous enlightenment just by being in his presence. Others received complete teachings in dreams or visions. Some discovered that they suddenly possessed knowledge of Sanskrit texts they had never studied, or found themselves able to perform advanced meditation practices without any formal training. This wasn't just exceptional teaching. This was the direct transmission of consciousness itself. Padmasambhava was literally downloading enlightened awareness into the minds of his students, preparing them to carry on his work long after his physical departure. But perhaps most importantly, during this period he began hiding the Dharma teachings, the hidden treasures that would be discovered by future generations when humanity was ready for more advanced spiritual knowledge. These weren't just written texts. Padmasambhava was encoding spiritual transmissions into the landscape itself, hiding teachings in rocks, lakes, and sacred sites across Tibet. He was creating a time-release system of enlightenment that would continue to unfold for centuries to come. And all of this was preparation for his ultimate demonstration, the transcendence of death itself through the achievement of the rainbow body. After decades of establishing Buddhism in Tibet and training countless disciples, Padmasambhava announced that his earthly mission was complete. But what happened next defied every conventional understanding of death and challenged the very foundations of physical reality. Instead of dying in the ordinary sense, Padmasambhava gathered his closest disciples and explained that he was about to demonstrate the ultimate teaching, the complete transcendence of physical limitations through the transformation of the body into pure light. This wasn't just a metaphorical or symbolic teaching. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, Padmasambhava's physical body literally began to dissolve into rainbow-colored light over a period of several days. But here's what makes this even more extraordinary. This wasn't a one-time miracle. The rainbow body achievement has been documented throughout Tibetan history, with over 160,000 verified cases of advanced practitioners whose bodies disappeared at death, leaving behind only hair and fingernails. As recently as 2013, a monk named Khenpo Achos achieved the rainbow body in a Chinese hospital, with his body shrinking and eventually disappearing while under medical observation. The Chinese authorities had no explanation for what they witnessed. But Padmasambhava was the first to achieve this transcendence, and his method reveals something profound about the nature of consciousness and physical reality. According to his teachings, the rainbow body is achieved when a practitioner realizes that the physical body is actually a projection of consciousness, not the other way around. Most people believe that consciousness emerges from the brain, but Padmasambhava taught that the body emerges from consciousness. When this realization becomes complete, not just intellectual understanding, but direct experiential knowledge, the practitioner gains the ability to consciously dissolve the physical form back into its source, pure awareness. The rainbow colors that appear during this process represent the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space, returning to their essential nature as expressions of enlightened consciousness. The body doesn't die, it transforms into a more refined state of existence. But here's the most incredible part. Padmasambhava didn't just achieve the rainbow body for himself. He left behind detailed instructions for how others could accomplish the same transcendence. These teachings, hidden as terma throughout Tibet, continue to be discovered and practiced today. And this brings us to perhaps the most important aspect of Padmasambhava's legacy: his prophecies about the modern age and why his teachings are more relevant now than ever before. Before his rainbow body transformation, Padmasambhava made a series of prophecies that have proven to be remarkably accurate. He predicted the coming of the Dark Age, a time when spiritual knowledge would be corrupted, when materialism would dominate human consciousness, and when humanity would face unprecedented challenges to its survival. But he also predicted that this would be the time when his hidden teachings would be most needed and most accessible. The terma system that Padmasambhava created wasn't random. He encoded specific teachings to be discovered at precise moments in history when humanity would be ready for them. And many of these discoveries have occurred in the last century, suggesting that we're living in the time he foresaw. These hidden teachings reveal advanced techniques for consciousness development that go far beyond traditional meditation practices. They include methods for achieving conscious death and rebirth, maintaining awareness during the transition between lives, communicating with enlightened beings across dimensions, transforming negative emotions into wisdom energy, developing supernatural abilities for the benefit of all beings. But perhaps most importantly, they provide a roadmap for achieving the rainbow body in the modern world. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds incredible, but how is this relevant to my life today? Here's the profound truth that Padmasambhava understood. The same consciousness techniques that allow for the transcendence of death also transform how you live. When you truly understand that your body is a projection of consciousness, that your thoughts create your reality, that death is just a transition rather than an ending, everything changes. You stop living in fear. You stop being controlled by circumstances. You begin to recognize your own unlimited potential and start living from that place of power. Modern quantum physics is beginning to validate what Padmasambhava taught 1,200 years ago. that consciousness is fundamental to reality, that observation affects physical phenomena, and that the boundaries between mind and matter are far more fluid than we previously believed. Scientists like Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness operates at the quantum level, suggesting that the mind can indeed influence physical reality in ways that align perfectly with Padmasambhava's teachings about the rainbow body. But here's what's truly remarkable. You don't have to wait for science to catch up to begin applying these principles in your own life. The Dharma teachings that continue to be discovered include practical methods that anyone can use to develop greater mastery over consciousness. These aren't just esoteric practices for advanced yogis. They're tools for transforming your everyday experience of reality. For example, one recently discovered Dharma text reveals a technique called Illusory body practice, a method for recognizing the dreamlike nature of physical existence while remaining fully functional in daily life. Practitioners report that this practice leads to decreased anxiety, greater emotional resilience, and an increased ability to manifest positive changes in their circumstances. Another hidden teaching focuses on clear light meditation, a practice for accessing the same luminous awareness that appears at the moment of death. Regular practitioners of this technique often report profound spiritual experiences, enhanced intuition, and a dramatic reduction in their fear of death. But perhaps most significantly, these teachings reveal that the rainbow body achievement isn't just about transcending death, it's about transcending all limitations. It's about recognizing that you are not a limited physical being having occasional spiritual experiences, but rather unlimited consciousness temporarily expressing itself through a physical form. And this recognition, Padmasambhava taught, is the key to living with complete freedom and fearlessness, regardless of external circumstances. Throughout Tibet, Padmasambhava is revered not just as a great teacher, but as the second Buddha, a title that carries profound significance. But why is he considered equal to the historical Buddha himself? The answer reveals something extraordinary about the nature of enlightenment and spiritual evolution. While the Buddha Shakyamuni achieved enlightenment and taught the fundamental principles of awakening, Padmasambhava demonstrated something even more advanced: the complete mastery of consciousness in all its forms, including the ability to transcend physical death itself. The Buddha taught that suffering could be ended through the elimination of attachment and ignorance. Padmasambhava went further, showing that even death, the ultimate source of human fear, could be transformed into an opportunity for liberation. But here's what makes this even more significant. Padmasambhava's teachings weren't just for his own time. He specifically designed them to be most relevant during what he called the degenerate age, our current era, when spiritual knowledge would be most needed but also most difficult to access. In other words, while the Buddha's teachings were perfect for his time, Padmasambhava's teachings were specifically crafted for our time. He foresaw the challenges that modern humanity would face: materialism, environmental destruction, spiritual confusion, the fear of death in a secular age. And he provided exactly the tools we need to navigate these challenges. This is why his influence continues to grow rather than diminish. Every year, more Dharma teachings are discovered. More practitioners achieve advanced realizations using his methods. More people report experiences that align with his descriptions of consciousness beyond physical death. Padmasambhava didn't just conquer death for himself. He created a legacy that continues to help others transcend their limitations across centuries. He proved that consciousness is not bound by time, space, or physical form, and he left us a roadmap for achieving the same transcendence. But perhaps most importantly, he showed us that what we call impossible is simply a limitation of our current understanding. The rainbow body, communication across dimensions, the ability to hide teachings in the landscape itself. These aren't miracles in the supernatural sense. They're natural expressions of consciousness that has realized its true, unlimited nature. And that realization, he taught, is available to anyone willing to look beyond the illusion of physical limitation and recognize their own infinite potential. As we reach the end of this extraordinary journey through the life and teachings of Padmasambhava, I want you to sit with a profound realization. You've just learned about a man who proved that death is not the end of consciousness, but simply another transition in an eternal journey of awakening. But more than that, you've discovered that the same principles he used to achieve the rainbow body, the recognition that consciousness creates reality, that physical limitations are projections of the mind, that love and compassion can transform any obstacle, these principles are available to you right now. You don't have to wait until death to begin transcending limitations. You don't have to wait for some future lifetime to start developing the consciousness skills that Padmasambhava mastered. The Dharma teachings he hid are being discovered in our time because this is when they're most needed. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living as if you're just a physical body destined for decay and death? Or will you begin exploring the unlimited potential of consciousness that Padmasambhava demonstrated is your true nature? But remember, Padmasambhava's greatest teaching wasn't about achieving supernatural powers or transcending death. It was about recognizing that you are already unlimited consciousness, temporarily wearing the costume of a physical form. And that recognition, he taught, is the beginning of true freedom. If this video has opened your eyes to new possibilities about the nature of consciousness and death, let me know in the comments below. Share your thoughts, your questions, your own experiences with these teachings. And if you're ready to continue exploring the hidden wisdom that can transform your understanding of life and death, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because Padmasambhava's story is just the beginning of what we'll discover together. The wizard who conquered death itself left us a gift, the knowledge that death is just an illusion and that consciousness is eternal. The question is, are you ready to claim that gift?